In the early hours before dawn, when the Caribbean was still wrapped in darkness and the horizon barely hinted at morning, the message was already clear. No adversary would ever be allowed to imagine, even for a moment, that America's Navy could be threatened. Not here, not anywhere. Because on this stretch of open ocean, there was no competing Navy. There was only a test of resolve and the consequences of misjudging it. At approximately 4:17 local time, three fast-moving Venezuelan patrol vessels surged out of the black Caribbean horizon. Their silhouettes appeared suddenly on American radar screens, closing fast, engines driving them forward at roughly 28 knots. They did not approach cautiously. They did not linger at a distance. Instead, they sliced aggressively across the projected bow of the U.S. Carrier Strike Group, cutting directly into the formation's course. Their movement formed a deliberate barrier of steel and wake, a calculated wall of water meant to force the American ships to stop, turn, or retreat. Moments later, aboard the USS George Washington, the collision alarm sounded. Its sharp tone echoed through steel corridors as radar displays bloomed with converging tracks. The range collapsed to under 12 nautical miles, eliminating any illusion of coincidence. This was no navigational error, no confused patrol drifting off course. The geometry of the approach was too precise, too intentional. Venezuela was effectively declaring a stretch of international water to be its own security zone, daring the United States Navy to challenge the claim. The American response was immediate in its restraint. The Carrier Strike Group did not alter course. It did not slow. It did not signal hesitation. The massive nuclear-powered carrier held its line, slicing through the dark sea with steady confidence. The message was unmistakable. Freedom of navigation was not a negotiable concept. What unfolded over the next minutes would test tactics, nerve, and the unspoken language of naval power projection. By choosing confrontation, Venezuela had made a critical miscalculation, and they would realize it far sooner than expected. At 4:19, the three Venezuelan patrol vessels advanced in a tight V-shaped formation, their wakes carving sharp white lines across the Caribbean surface as they pushed beyond 28 knots. Instead of shadowing the strike group from a respectful distance, they angled directly into its projected route, maneuvering with the precision of a unit that had rehearsed this move before. Every incremental adjustment of their bows placed them closer to the corridor through which the USS George Washington would pass. It looked deliberate, theatrical, and dangerous all at once. On the carrier's bridge, radar operators called out bearings as the tightening triangle became impossible to ignore. Within seconds, sailors moved with urgency, fastening gear, checking communications, and bracing for escalation. Although carrier groups are built to absorb pressure, an interception inside 12 nautical miles is never routine. For vessels of this size, that range marks a psychological and tactical threshold where reaction time collapses. A ship the size of a carrier cannot turn sharply or accelerate away on impulse. Any hostile vessel that breaches this distance can force confrontation simply through positioning alone. That was precisely why the bridge treated the closing formation with such gravity. Despite the early hour, tension surged through the ship. The Venezuelan vessels maintained perfect alignment, their bows not pointed toward open water, but toward the predicted path of the carrier itself. This was not drifting. This was not observation. It was attack geometry, a calculated intercept angle designed to force a decision. Even more striking was the absence of any slowdown. Their speed held steady. Their navigation lights burned bright. They were not concealing their presence. They were amplifying it. Across the strike group, posture shifted without a word being spoken. Escorts tightened formation. Readiness levels increased silently. No weapons were armed, but everyone understood that intent was being measured in meters and seconds. As the gap narrowed further, a realization spread through the command spaces of the carrier. This was not surveillance. This was not a patrol gone wrong. The Venezuelan vessels were placing themselves directly in the carrier's path, creating a line they clearly did not expect the United States to cross. They were not testing hardware, they were testing resolve. The pattern was too exact, the timing too perfect for chance. This was a maneuver designed to provoke a decision at the highest stakes. Imagine standing on that bridge in the dim, pre-dawn glow, watching three fast patrol ships lock into formation and close without hesitation. Alarms echoing, radar screens tightening, every eye waiting for your call. Would you turn or would you hold the line? The answer came without drama. At the moment the Venezuelan formation committed fully to its intercept angle, the U.S. Navy responded with a move that was calm, controlled, and devastatingly clear. The USS Gravely, positioned on the carrier's starboard side, pushed its turbines harder and slid into a new trajectory. The destroyer angled its bow toward the intercept line, drifting starboard in a smooth, deliberate arc that placed it directly between the approaching patrol craft and the USS George Washington. At sea, speed matters, but positioning decides everything. The ship that claims the decisive angle controls how the encounter unfolds. That was why the Gravely's maneuver felt cold and unnerving in its precision. It did not swerve. It did not rush. It cut across the water with the confidence of a vessel that understood every meter of the battle space it occupied. Above the destroyer, rotors screamed to life as an MH-60R Seahawk lifted from its deck and climbed into the darkening sky. The helicopter swung into a wide orbit, its presence impossible to miss. From miles away, it announced awareness, surveillance, and overwatch. The U.S. Navy has long relied on this visible aerial deterrence during close approaches, and the effect was intentional. The Seahawk did not charge forward. It hovered with discipline, a floating reminder that every move below was being watched, recorded, and understood. Below, the Gravely became a soft barrier, a tool used to expose an approaching vessel's true intent. By occupying the contested path at a sharper angle, the destroyer forced Venezuela to choose: alter course, escalate openly, or risk a dangerous crossing situation. For a brief moment, observers might have expected the Venezuelan formation to slow or widen. It did neither. The three patrol ships held speed, stubborn and defiant, their wakes stretching long behind them with no sign of retreat. From the air, the Seahawk captured every bearing change. From the sea, the Gravely advanced like a blade. And in that moment, the truth became unavoidable. Venezuela was not probing sensors or discipline. Maintaining high speeds signaled something deeper, an attempt to pressure the U.S. Navy into yielding space. But the American response remained unwavering. By controlling the intercept line, the Gravely shaped the encounter without firing a shot. As the range closed further, the destroyer's posture shifted again. Slowly, deliberately, the Mark 45 5-inch gun began to rotate. It did not snap to target. It did not lock. It eased toward the approaching ships and stopped at an angle that carried universal meaning: readiness. Around it, other systems adjusted quietly. The close-in weapon system tracked in passive mode. The Aegis radar listened rather than illuminated. Capability was revealed without aggression, preparation without provocation. Overhead, the Seahawk continued its orbit, a sentry against the brightening sky. Visibility itself became a weapon. Deterrence by presence, by posture, by discipline. The message was unmistakable. The United States was fully prepared, yet still offering every opportunity for disengagement. Despite it all, the Venezuelan ships pressed on. Their bows dug into the water, the range close to 4 nautical miles. At that distance, every wake pattern, every engine note matters. The Gravely broadcast on open frequency, calm and formal, reminding all vessels that the carrier strike group was transiting lawful international waters and expected safe conduct. The transmission was public, heard by anyone listening. Venezuela did not answer by voice. Instead, flags rose from the lead patrol ship, snapping in the wind. Coded signals of territorial enforcement, symbolic defiance without spoken escalation. Through binoculars on the carrier's bridge, the meaning was clear. Caracas was attempting to redraw the map at sea. Neither side changed course. The American ships held 20 knots like a metronome. The Venezuelan formation continued forward. Silence settled between them, brittle and heavy. No negotiations, no threats, just steel, water, and will. Inside the Gravely, sensors tracked engine signatures. Speed remained high, no withdrawal. The psychological duel intensified. Stability versus momentum. Discipline versus pressure. For nearly 3 minutes, the formations existed on the edge, every sailor aware of how thin the line had become. Then, the shift. Subtle but unmistakable. Sensors registered the change first. The lead Venezuelan patrol ship eased its throttle, dropping from the high 20s to around 18 knots. The others followed. It was not retreat, but it was the first step back from the brink. Wakes softened. Geometry loosened. The pressure lifted like steam off warm steel. Minutes later, the formation began to slide east-southeast, drifting away from the carrier's path. A controlled withdrawal disguised as a routine course change. On the American side, nothing changed. The USS George Washington held course. The Gravely maintained position. The Seahawk stayed overhead. No acknowledgement, no concession. As the Venezuelan ships faded toward the horizon, their aggressive wakes curving outward, the outcome was undeniable. Venezuela had blinked, not because of firepower, but because of presence. Calm, predictable, unwavering presence. The Caribbean returned to quiet as the sun climbed. The U.S. carrier strike group continued on its way, untouched, unchallenged. Venezuela had attempted to block a path that belongs to no single nation, and in the end, it was Venezuela that turned away. No shots fired, no missiles armed, yet the message carried the weight of steel. This was not just another morning at sea. It was a reminder that brinkmanship is real, that lines are enforced not by words, but by resolve. Standing on that bridge at dawn, watching 3 fast patrol ships aim for your bow, would you have held the line the same way? Have held the line the same way? Have held